Hello there, and welcome to the Making of documentary for Star Trek Deception 3. I'm Leo Tierney, and I'm the director of Deception 3, and I'd like to spend a bit of time in this video explaining all the work we put into this short 15-minute film. So sit back, grab a nice warm cup of tea, and enjoy. So Star Trek Deception 3 is a sequel to our previous two Star Trek fan films, Deception 1 and Deception 2, which focus on the adventures of two Starfleet officers, Lieutenant Miller and Commander Stoven of the USS Longshanks. But once we finally decided to make Deception 3, the first thing we did was create a script, come up with loads of ideas. Obviously this process took a few years, but I wanted to make sure we had a good enough script before we started shooting anything. But during this time, when I was refining the script, I also spent my time creating a previs of the entire film, which, if you're not quite sure what a previs is, it's a brief visualization of the entire film. So the entire 15-minute film was created in Unreal using very rough characters, using very rough sets. But it does allow you to watch the entire film and understand where things are getting slow, pacing needs building up, and it makes it easy for you to be able to make tweaks and changes before having to shoot anything. We'd accumulated a whole bunch of costumes and props from the previous two films, so we had a whole bunch of Starfleet uniforms, as well as props such as phasers and tricorders, which I'd had 3D printed a while back. However, for Deception 3, I'm still trying to find something that sets it apart from other fan films, and so I wanted to try something a little bit different. And in focusing on this, over the last few years, I've been fascinated by virtual production, using LED volumes seen in such shows as like The Mandalorian, which is incredible how they can turn just a simple warehouse studio into a huge hangar bay. I also wanted to find some kind of like low budget option for the guerrilla filmmaker out there. And I did test out using projectors, which a lot of people have recommended, but I found the projectors they're not bright enough. So in the end, I decided to go for the TV route. So I ended up getting an LG 86-inch, which was the biggest television I've ever had. So having to use a television as a backdrop meant that I didn't have to make physical sets. However, it did mean I had to make virtual sets. This was done in the Unreal Engine using assets that I'd found online and also assets that I'd created myself. This did take a while to get realistic results that I was happy with. The Unreal Engine's a fantastic engine, but it does still take a long time to get something that looks properly physically correct. In the end, I think it looked good, and I was able to shoot against the television and get some nice results. And the actors were very happy to see the stuff that was actually happening on set behind them, so they didn't actually have to imagine it, which I believe was a great benefit for the actors. At this point, it's probably a good idea to talk about the actors. So first off, we have James Sygrove and Rick Huggins reprising their roles as Commander Stoven and Lieutenant Miller. We then have newcomers, Mary Claire McLean as Captain Castile, along with Lizzie Schenk as the Ambassador Stavok. We also have Alex Mars returning as Dr. Edwards, and we also have a couple of Klingons returning. Mark Sutton, who played Captain Torak in Deception 2, as well as Neil Clark, who played one of the Klingon helms in Deception 2. And it was time to move on to post-production once that was all in the bag.
In the bag, baby!
So speaking of post-production, it's probably a good idea to mention at this moment that I spent a very long time trying to focus on the opening shot. So I originally filmed Mark and Neil as the speaking council members, but in the end, I had to bin all the footage because the camera tracking software just couldn't track the camera correctly. So in the end, I decided just to film myself against green screen. So yeah, after the filming was complete came the long process of post-production. The TV background did help enormously, but there were a few shots where it required rotoscoping, having to cut around heads, wherever cut around limbs, they're straight too far away from the TV bounds, and creating digital set extensions for the backgrounds took longer than I expected because it was a bit harder to get the exact camera that I used on set. But yeah, in the end, I think the effort was worthwhile. The shots do look very nice. There's only a couple of full-on CG shots with the ships flying around. I tried to keep them relatively few. The main focus for this film should be on the characters, so I tried to keep the amount of CG shots to a minimum. And yeah, so that's about it. After 4 or 5 years from working on Star Trek Deception 3, it's finally released onto YouTube. It's got a whole bunch of views, and I think people are generally quite happy with it. Strange to think that Deception 1 was released almost a decade ago. Now, while it does seem like a large amount of time to work on a single project, like 4 or 5 years to work on a single 15-minute film, I do think projects such as this do deserve the amount of time to put in to be crafted, because the final result shows the hundreds and hundreds of hours of effort that was put into it. So yeah, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this little video talking about the making of Star Trek Deception 3 and gained a bit of insight into the creation of these fun little fan films. We all enjoy making them, and I hope you enjoy watching them.